What's up guys, welcome back to Move Plus. I hope you're all keeping well out there. So warm up is going to start off with 2 minutes of cardio of your choice, so you guys can decide what you want to do in this first piece just to get things loosened up. What we're going to do is alternate back and forth between 20 seconds of running on the spot, so nothing too fancy there, just moving along, and then 20 seconds of jumping jacks. And those two things will just go back and forth until we've completed 2 minutes. The following 3 minutes is going to be an EMOM format, so that means that every minute on the minute we're going to do 10 up downs, which is going to look like this. 10 of those then rolls into max strict press. So with whatever weighted object you have at home there, just pressing up above the head. And you do that for the remainder of that 60-second block, which means we'll do 3 of those to finish off the warm-up. Good to go, Maddie? Good to go. Yep. All right, starting in 10, so 2 minutes of cardio of your choice. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So starting off running on the spot, guys, you can do 1 movement, you can do 2 movements, you can do as many as you want, as long as these are nice, straightforward things, nothing too heavy, nothing too technical, and allowing that body just to kind of ramp the intensity up over time. So as I said, we're going to do 20 seconds of the run, which we're going to switch over in a sec. And now switching to jumping jacks is the other movement. We're going to bounce back and forth between those. So as I said, nice and simple, you don't have to think about them too much, and if you have been sitting still for the last little while, maybe you've been at the computer, maybe you've been driving, body's a little stiff, these are just nice easy ones that you can kind of slowly ease into that intensity as you go. And back to running again. So other things like skipping, if you've got space to do shuttle runs or bear crawls or something like that, that's good too. If you happen to own a exercise bike, treadmill, anything like that, anything that's just going to get that heart rate up is going to be good. Good, and back on the jumping jacks. So with this one, guys, we want to see the feet go close to wide. Okay, so we're looking at ankles pretty much touching in the middle, and then a stance not too dissimilar to like a sumo stance as the jump out. Hands are going to go from thighs up to overhead. And notice Maddie's going nice and long with those arms. Rather than just going for pure speed, he's going more for range of motion at the shoulder. And switching out. With the run, this is probably the least technical thing possible. The main thing is just staying on the balls of the feet rather than clunking your heels on the ground. Make sure those arms are kicking in as well, so we get that whole body moving. Okay, one more switch back, so last lot of jumping jacks. So once we get to the end of this one, guys, we've got the next 3 minutes as 10 up downs into max strict press every minute on the minute for those remaining 3. Okay, 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So coming down to up downs, guys, what we're going to do is go from a standing start down to a push-up position, preferably seeing a jump from that sort of hinge position out to the push-up position. If you're new to this or if you struggle with this kind of thing, you can step in and out, but the end game is for us to get to that jumping position. So that was our stepping one there that Maddie demoed. And we want to make sure that we are completely straight at the top and completely straight at the bottom there, so looking for shoulders, hips, knees, ankles, everything to line up as one. Once we get to 10, we're going to go into some strict presses. All right, so Maddie's using 2 dumbbells. You guys use whatever you have access to at home there. Maybe it's a single dumbbell, maybe it's a kettlebell, maybe it's a loaded backpack, something like that. We want to see the body nice and straight, right? So no dipping and driving the legs, no moving of the hips. It's purely the arms pushing off. Okay, 3, 2, 1, and coming down to the up downs again. Now, if we look at Maddie's footwork here, you'll notice that at the back, the feet are going to narrow up to the point that they're almost touching. As he comes up though, he's going to split wide. That's going to help just allow the movement to flow nicely. So it'll allow him to get that nice high hip position rather than trying to shoot too narrow. You can do that, but that's obviously going to require a fair bit more hamstring flexibility. This just makes it a little bit easier to work with. Now the arms stay nice and stiff the whole time. Sometimes the temptation is to drop through like we would for a burpee, but we want nice active shoulders, nice locked out elbows. Nice, all right, there's our 10. We go back into the presses. So there's no set number on the press, guys. It's just filling up the remainder of the minute each time. And he's got that nice lockout position at the top where his head is just slightly forward of his arms. I can see his ear is kind of lining up with his bicep there, keeping the dumbbells nice and neutral. And back into it one more time. So final minute of the warm-up, guys, gonna go back on those up downs. And his hand position on the ground is shoulder width or just slightly wider. So think very similar to when we would do things like bench press or burpees or overhead pressing, that sort of thing. It's in a nice, strong, stacked position. Don't want to go too wide or too far out ahead of ourselves. They should stack pretty much straight down from the shoulders. And Maddie's doing a nice little sort of bounce return back up to his feet again from that bottom position. But again, if you're learning this, if you're not fluent with this movement, you can pause at the back and take a moment to establish control and then jump the feet in. Okay, so last lot of strict press, got 15 seconds left. And time. All right, so that is the warm-up done, guys. Grab a drink, have a little bit of rest. We're gonna have a look at the move section next. Okay, so we're gonna check out the move workout now, guys. How this one is structured is we have 2 7-minute AMRAPs. There'll be a 1-minute break in between them. And what you'll basically do is in the first one, you will work for a score. The second one, you're going to reset back to 0 and you're going to try to either match that score or possibly even beat it. So this is gonna be a little bit of working hard, a little bit of controlling the pace as well. It's a little bit of a balancing the needle kind of deal. So what we'll see in the 7-minute AMRAPs, guys, is the first movement is 20 single dumbbell floor press. So we're gonna take a spot on the ground. We'll have the feet planted flat, both hands on either head of the dumbbell, and going from elbows to ground up to lockout. 20 repetitions of that then moves into 16 weighted sit-ups. So setting ourselves up, knees now butterflied out. Okay, and we are going from a laying position to a sit-up position. Okay, so we go through 16 of those. We then have 10 alternating dumbbell up-down. So with this one, going from standing to the push-up position, and we change that dumbbell along the way, going from right to left until we hit 10. Now we'll cycle that for 7 minutes straight. We then have that 1-minute break, we reset back to 0, and we go for another 7 minutes on that. Good to go, Maddie? Yep. All right, starting in 10. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So 20 reps on the floor press, guys. Main thing here is we want to see elbows, or at the bare minimum, your triceps touching the ground. Okay, and then we're going to hit a lockout at the top. We're going to try and have 5 points of contact on the floor. So that is your feet are 1 and 2. Hips is 3, shoulders is 4, and the head is the 5th one there. And we want to keep all of them grounded. So no matter how tired you get, if this is getting really fatiguing, the arms are starting to die, the legs are starting to lift, or the head's starting to crane up, keep everything planted. Use the ground to your advantage, push everything back into the floor. Keep the rear chain of muscles in the body locked in place so that that front chain can work as hard as it can. It's a nice stable base for it to work off. 20 reps on this. Depending on what weights you have access to at home, it might be unbroken, it might be broken up. That's kind of up to you. Hopefully we can kind of start unbroken and then maybe move to like a 10 and 10 split, something like that. But if you happen to be working with something quite heavy and that's the only option you have, just chip away at it, do 5 at a time, 7 at a time, something like that. That's cool. We've now moved into the 16 weighted sit-ups. Now, again, depending on what access you have to equipment at home, this might be a different weight to the press. This is generally better done with something probably a little lighter than what we would normally do for the press there. We want to keep it really close into your collarbones. We don't want to have that dumbbell kind of shifting away and then dropping back, because that becomes almost like a counter lever. It makes it easier for you to do it rather than harder. So the more you can keep it kind of locked against the body, the harder those abs have to work. Now you'll notice that Maddie's using an ab mat. That is kind of an optional thing, right? It's just a little bit more support, gives his lumbar spine a little more something to kind of push against, gives it a little bit more purchase there, allows him to also kind of arch and extend through those abs a little bit better. But you can definitely do this on flat ground. From here, we're moving to the alternating up-down. So we had a look at these in the warm-up, going from a stand-up position to a push-up position. We're now adding in the element of that extra bit of weight, also some coordination in that hand switch as well. So all the same stuff as far as being upright at the top, nice and straight at the bottom. We're now just going to work with that little bit of lopsided loading. The most important change with this is make sure that you brace the back before you stand up, because now that we're lifting a weight off the ground, albeit light, we want to make sure that we're not pulling with a rounded back. So 10 of those, we come back around into the presses. So that's taken us nearly 3 minutes, so probably looking at 2 to 3 rounds of this if we're sort of staying on course. One thing Matty's doing right now as he's pressing is he is driving his shoulder blades back into the ground and like squeezing his scapulas together. So he doesn't want to be overreaching, and he especially doesn't want to be like pressing off with that shoulder kind of hitching up as he's pushing off. I mentioned before, it's about creating stability through the joints. So we want to make sure they lock into the back, and then it's just the elbows extending to the press rather than the whole shoulder protracting into the reach. Now what we'll find with this is we're always looking for a nice vertical forearm. So at the top, we're going to be sitting sort of just above the shoulder, but at the bottom, you'll probably find that dumbbell is going to be sitting kind of low sternum, so it's a little bit lower down than that pec line, and that's going to again tie into that nice upright forearm position rather than it kind of folding back on us and going into too deep of an elbow bend. Now with this weighted setup, guys, if you find that 16 reps becomes just incredibly difficult, get rid of the dumbbell, just go body weight, okay? Or if you need to, you can break it up. You might go 6-5-5 or something like that. If you have the option to go a lighter weight, use a lighter weight, that's cool. One thing Matty's doing a good job of here though is he's keeping his butt stuck to the ground, right? He's allowing the hips to stay still whilst the upper body does the movement back and forth over the pad. He's not kind of seesawing back and forth on that ab mat and lifting the bum off the ground. Keeping that dumbbell pressed into his body. So the easy thing to do with this is to start reaching that dumbbell out in front. That will kind of pull you out of the sit-up. We don't want that. We want to make it nice and challenging. So we talked about in the last set, guys, the idea of like bracing the back before you pick up. This is why it's really important to get the feet sort of as high up and as close to the line of the dumbbell as possible. Just makes for an easier deadlift out of the bottom there. If your feet are, 10, 20, 30 centimeters back from the dumbbell, you're gonna feel like you're reaching really, really far out in front. So try to get everything as close and as lined up as you can. Also think about with your shoulders, obviously you've got one hand kind of going a little deeper than the other one now. That side with the dumbbell is going to be a little bit higher up, so you might have to kind of draw that shoulder back. The other one might have to reach a little bit further just to get that nice and level. So we've got about 90 seconds left. We'll see how far into this third round we can get. So Matty's just taking the time to hit that nice strong lockout at the top. Half a second pause just to establish control. It's not shortcutting that range of motion or rushing it just for the sake of the scoreboard. Okay, last minute. So if you are using an ab mat, guys, make sure that it sits behind your butt so that when you lay back, it's going to fit into the curve of your low back. It's not for sitting on. That's what we've got the gym mat out for. That's the cushioning for the tailbone. The actual ab mat itself is for that lumbar spine. So it's got something to kind of curve over the top of. 20 seconds. Three, 2, 1, and resting. So 1 minute rest here, guys. Have a little bit of a move around, get some recovery time in. We're going to go through that 7 minutes again. Remember, we start back at 0, and whatever score we just got then, we're going to try and match or even possibly beat. Okay, 30 seconds. Yeah. 20 seconds. So we'll get ourselves ready for this next block. So it's 7 minutes again, but whatever you got in the last one, we're going to try and match or beat that. 10 seconds. So 20 floor press, 16 sit-ups, 10 up-downs. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So 7 minutes on. Again, go through the technique. This first round through, guys, just check everything back in. Feet are planted, hips, shoulders, head, all that's flat on the ground. Shoulder blades wound back together, so you're going to feel like your rhomboids, your lats, everything around the back of the shoulders is going to lock in. And it's just about extending the elbow and, pressing the elbow to extension, not overreaching the dumbbell. Good idea every now and then just to give the hands a bit of a drive, guys. Anytime we're doing a weight sort of over our head, whether it's floor press or overhead press, and we're in that kind of close-ish grip, grabbing onto the hex parts of the dumbbells, the hands get a little bit slick, can get a little bit loose on there, so just make sure you're keeping that nice and dry, keep it safe. If you don't happen to have an ab mat for this setup, guys, as I said, it doesn't matter too much, but if you are wanting that extra little bit of support and you don't have an ab mat, use a small couch cushion, roll up a towel, roll up a hoodie if you want to. Anything that's just going to kind of sit and mimic that shape of your low back gives you something just to kind of open and close over the top of. Should definitely feel comfortable when you do it. So if you feel like you're getting bent over something and it feels really uncomfortable, obviously we've kind of probably got the shape wrong there. So just play around with something that's sort of small, just a little bit of a rise there like the ab mat. As I said, you should feel comfortable. It should feel like it enhances the movement. So Maddie's still keeping that dumbbell nice and close in. It's not allowing himself to cheat through it by moving that dumbbell forward. All right, alternating up, down for 10. So we touched on this during the warm-up, guys, but just remember that stance, right? It's going to go narrow at the back, wide at the top. And this is especially important as far as getting our feet as close up to our hands as possible. Don't want to be stepping narrow and having the feet kind of get trapped. If there's a lack of flexibility there, your feet will be way back from the dumbbell, and that deadlift off the ground, even though it's a light dumbbell, is going to feel really awkward. Maddie's just taking that moment before he takes off the ground just to get that low back kind of as flat as possible and brace up that midsection. So Maddie's on a similar kind of time frame, which is good. He's sticking to similar splits to the last 7-minute section, which is the goal. We want to stay on task, on par with it. If we can get a little bit extra speed out of the tail end of this, that'd be awesome. We'll see how we go. Remember to think about that vertical forearm, yeah? We don't want to be above the shoulders at the top and then still above the shoulders at the bottom, because that means those elbows are going to have to fold in a really weird way. We want to have it sitting sort of just below chest height. And normally when we do ab mats in the normal kind of fashion that we do, we usually have an arm swing involved with this. It will create momentum, make it kind of a bit more of a full body movement. Now, we're not going to be doing that here, obviously, because the hands are going to be holding onto that dumbbell. Just adds to that challenge of it. So normally where we would lay back and the hands contacting the ground is kind of our marker at the back. Now that marker is going to be that your shoulders touch the ground. So this is where we want to feel that that back lays right back into as flat as we can be. If your head doesn't touch the ground, that doesn't matter too much. We just want to make sure that the shoulders get down, and then they're going to kind of snap forward. Ribs are going to snap down into that nice kind of crunch position, and then we sit all the way up. All right. So we've got 2 minutes left. One thing that Matt does really, really well with this up-down is that when he hits that bottom position, even though he's only there for a moment, he's really cautious of letting those hips drop too far, right? He's hitting that nice flat position. So that's all that tension and strength through the midline there, through those abs. We want to make sure that we're not sagging the hips through and kind of bowing through, dropping down into almost like an up dog position. Make sure that we can control that enough. All right, moving into that next round. Okay, we've got about 45 seconds to go. This looks like we're fairly well on track to get pretty close to that last round, which is what we're after. Okay, moving to the sit-ups. Should be able to get a handful of reps out here. Got 20 seconds left. Ten seconds. And time. Alrighty, well done, Maddie. So that is the move section done, guys. Have a little bit of chill. We're going to cool down with some stretches in a moment. Alrighty guys, so now that all the hard stuff's done, we're going to get into a little bit of mobility work just to finish things off. So the first of 2 drills we're going to do is a seated quad stretch. So this one on the ground, we're going to hook one foot up behind, one in front, and then we're going to lean back on the other elbow there. So we're going to do this for 45 seconds each side. So this is going to be mainly focused in the quad and the hip flexor, okay? So sort of stuff we use and gets quite knotted up if we're doing a lot of squatting, pulling, that sort of stuff, opening and closing of the hip. So key thing with this, you want to make sure that that left side there, that's the side we're stretching, who's got that heel pulled right into his butt cheek. We're going to get into as deep a knee bend as possible. We're also going to think about kind of rolling the hips across a little bit, trying to open through those hips as much as possible. That's where that lean onto that opposite elbow is going to come in. That allows us to kind of almost kind of corkscrew through the body a little bit. Okay, and switching sides. So he's going to turn out. We get the other side hooked up. So again, heel right up to the butt cheek. Other one's just tucked in front there. Leaning onto that left elbow. Now, if you find that this is pretty kind of bearable, it's not too bad, what you can do is Matty can take his right hand and reach up above his head, and that creates an even longer kind of stretch. He's reaching into that line, extending out, and he can hang out there. So that's just to kind of ramp it up a little bit if you feel like you need that. Some of you might find the arm down is more than enough. That's cool. 10 more seconds. Alrighty, so that's drill 1. The second one we're going to do is a pec and shoulder stretch. So we're just going to use the wall. Okay, so again, 45 on each side. Matty's going to plant that hand on there and he's going to turn his body away as much as he can. So he's got his right hand on, so it's the right pec, shoulder and bicep that's going to be getting the stretch. He's going to try and pull his left shoulder back and rotate his body as far back as he can. And breathing into the stretch too, guys. So think about like opening the ribs up, opening the chest up. This is good if we've been doing a ton of like burpees, push-ups, dips, all those sorts of things, up, downs, anything where we're in a pressing kind of a motion. So we'll just open it right up. And switching sides. So you can do this against the wall, you can do it against a door frame, or if you've got a post in the house, anything like that, anything nice and stable that you can kind of lock the arm in against, and then just turning away as much as you can. The feet don't have to be anywhere particular, but as long as you can kind of anchor in and turn away as much as possible. And play around with different hand positions, like down low, up high, that sort of thing. If you've got like if you're in a door frame, you can actually go to like a bent arm position, like that. That can change it up a little bit. So play around with some different stuff there, see if you can get some different angles on it. Alrighty, so those are your 2 drills, guys. See if you can go through that for a few rounds, loosen the body up. Otherwise, we'll catch you next time. That's been your Move Plus workout.